Unprotected sex with your husband, Mr. Hoagland, as well as a coworker within the same time period?
Well, Your Honor, my marriage has been a complete nightmare. Randy has held this big cloud over my head that I did sleep with a coworker, but that was before me and Randy even started dating.
The guy that she got with obviously took advantage of her.
And why did I get with him? I got with him because your roommate, your controlling roommate at this company, told me that you weren't interested in dating anyone.
In celibacy, I don't think that's a problem. I don't think it's a bad thing.
That you
the
weren't
fact of the matter is that
you guys got together, you had sex, but you had already had sex with a coworker.
Yeah.
I found out I was pregnant 2 months later. I thought I was only 2 or 3 weeks pregnant when I found out.
A week went by.
Oh.
Then you came up that day, that particular evening. I believe it was a Friday, because he had left for that weekend. Then you came up to my room. But
This courtroom description follows a sequence of emotionally charged paternity disputes overseen by Judge Lauren Lake, where DNA evidence becomes the final authority in relationships already strained by doubt, mistrust, and unresolved history. The cases unfold not as dramatic scenes, but as structured legal processes on the evidence stage, where facts are separated from fear, and the law insists on clarity. Each matter reflects how a DNA test can redefine identity, responsibility, and the future of a family. The first case centers on a married couple whose relationship has been quietly eroding since the birth of their first child. The court is presented with a divorce case atmosphere, even though the couple is still legally together. The husband expresses long-standing doubts about the paternity of their eldest son, doubts that have influenced how the child has been treated within the household. These doubts are rooted in timing, physical appearance, and a history of overlapping relationships before marriage. The wife admits to a prior relationship with a coworker during the same period, which becomes central to the legal inquiry. Judge Lauren Lake methodically guides the court through the timeline, emphasizing how evidence must align with medical facts rather than assumptions. The concept of adverse inference in Evidence Act principles is indirectly demonstrated when emotional arguments are set aside in favor of objective verification. The judge explains that speculation, resentment, and personal observation cannot replace forensic certainty. This moment reflects the relationship between law and justice, where fairness requires patience and proof, not suspicion. As the DNA test results are revealed, the husband learns that he is, in fact, the biological father. The courtroom outcome illustrates why people regret taking Truth Changes Everything podcast-style revelations lightly. The truth resolves the legal question, but it also exposes emotional damage that must now be repaired. Judge Lake addresses responsibility beyond biology, reinforcing that parenthood carries moral and legal duties that extend past doubt. The court makes it clear that child support obligations, emotional presence, and parental conduct do not pause while uncertainty lingers. The second case introduces a younger couple and extended family members, expanding the court's focus to include generational responsibility. Here, the dispute involves a child whose paternity is questioned due to overlapping relationships and admitted infidelity on both sides. The presence of a grandmother highlights how paternity cases often affect more than just parents, touching adoption stories, full episodes themes where belonging and lineage matter deeply. Judge Lauren Lake again narrows the discussion to relevant facts. Admissions of cheating are acknowledged but carefully placed within the legal framework of conception windows and protected versus unprotected encounters. The evidence stage becomes a lesson in jurisprudence, showing how the concept of justice in jurisprudence demands neutrality even when emotions run high. The judge emphasizes that accountability applies equally to all parties, regardless of gender or family role. When the DNA test confirms the biological father, the ruling brings relief but also accountability. The court reinforces that denial does not exempt one from responsibility. This moment mirrors discussions often heard in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where legal outcomes reshape personal narratives. The truth closes the legal dispute, but opens a new chapter in parenting, one defined by obligation rather than argument. The third case shifts the courtroom dynamic significantly. It involves a deceased alleged father and a grieving mother who seeks recognition of her child's biological lineage. The opposing party, the alleged grandmother, resists acknowledgement due to fear of emotional loss and concerns about motive. This case highlights how evidence law adapts when direct testing is impossible, relying instead on kinship DNA analysis through surviving relatives. Judge Lauren Lake approaches this matter with particular sensitivity, recognizing both grief and skepticism as valid human responses. The court carefully explains how surrogate DNA testing works and why it is admissible under established legal standards. This explanation underscores the relationship between law and justice, where compassion must still operate within procedural boundaries. The DNA test results confirm biological relatedness, resolving the legal question of family connection. The ruling demonstrates how truth can function as closure rather than conflict. This outcome aligns with themes found in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where acknowledgement and acceptance allow individuals to move forward. The court's decision establishes not only biological fact, but also legal recognition, ensuring the child's place within a family structure and potential future claims related to support and inheritance. Across all cases, Judge Lauren Lake reinforces a consistent message. The court is not a place for punishment but for resolution. The DNA test serves as a neutral instrument, stripping away narrative manipulation and emotional distortion. The process reflects lessons often discussed in the Divorce Course podcast, where unresolved questions can poison relationships long after legal issues should have ended. These cases collectively illustrate why people turn to the court when personal conversations fail. They show how Supreme Court child support principles begin at the trial level, where biological truth forms the foundation for long-term legal responsibility. The court does not celebrate conflict, but it does insist on clarity. In each matter, individuals arrive burdened by doubt, fear, and defensiveness. They leave with certainty, even when that certainty demands personal change. The courtroom becomes a place where truth changes everything, not through spectacle, but through structured legal reasoning and evidence-based conclusions. This description captures how modern family courts navigate DNA test cheating stories without judgment, focusing instead on factual determination and future stability. It reflects a justice system that values accuracy over accusation and responsibility over resentment. Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom stands as a space where science, law, and human consequence intersect, reminding everyone present that truth, once revealed, carries both relief and obligation. As the proceedings continue, the courtroom remains focused on one core principle: certainty through evidence. Judge Lauren Lake repeatedly reminds everyone present that emotions, assumptions, and personal narratives cannot outweigh verified facts. In these cases, the DNA test is not framed as entertainment or confrontation, but as a legal instrument designed to resolve questions that have lingered for months or even years. The court becomes the final space where speculation ends and accountability begins. In each matter, the judge carefully explains how the evidence stage operates. Medical timelines, conception windows, and documented relationships are reviewed not to shame anyone, but to establish a factual framework. This process reflects how the relationship between law and justice functions in family court. Justice is not about who feels most hurt or who speaks the loudest, but about applying consistent legal standards to deeply personal situations. The courtroom description emphasizes that fairness often feels uncomfortable, especially when truth contradicts long-held beliefs. Throughout the hearings, it becomes clear why many people regret taking Truth Changes Everything podcast narratives lightly. Once the truth is revealed, it cannot be undone. In the first family's case, confirmation of paternity does not instantly repair years of emotional distance. Instead, it forces an honest reckoning. The husband must confront the consequences of treating a child differently, while the wife must process the reality that doubt, once introduced, can permanently alter trust. Judge Lauren Lake stresses that while the court can resolve legal uncertainty, emotional repair requires intentional effort beyond the courtroom. The court also highlights how divorce case dynamics can exist even within intact marriages. Suspicion, unresolved resentment, and unspoken accusations function like invisible separations. By ordering and revealing DNA test results, the court removes the ambiguity that often fuels prolonged conflict. This approach mirrors discussions found in the Divorce Course podcast, where unresolved questions are shown to undermine relationships more effectively than confirmed truths. In the second case, the involvement of extended family members underscores how paternity disputes ripple outward. The grandmother's presence demonstrates that biological certainty affects not just parents, but entire family systems. Judge Lauren Lake addresses this directly, explaining that while grandparents may feel protective or skeptical, the legal process does not prioritize emotion over evidence. This moment reinforces the concept of justice in jurisprudence, where impartiality must prevail regardless of personal investment. The ruling confirms biological paternity, transforming denial into obligation. The court makes clear that fatherhood is not optional once established. Child support responsibilities, emotional involvement, and long-term presence are not negotiable outcomes. This ruling reflects foundational principles echoed in Supreme Court child support precedents, where the best interest of the child outweighs adult conflict. The courtroom description emphasizes that the law views children not as bargaining tools, but as individuals entitled to stability and support. As the third case unfolds, the tone shifts toward loss and legacy. With the alleged father deceased, the court must rely on indirect genetic testing to establish biological connection. Judge Lauren Lake explains this process carefully, ensuring all parties understand that the absence of direct DNA does not invalidate the child's right to truth. This explanation reinforces how evidence law adapts to real-world limitations without sacrificing accuracy. The grandmother's hesitation reveals another dimension of paternity cases, fear of emotional attachment. Judge Lauren Lake acknowledges this fear as human, but clarifies that legal recognition is not contingent on emotional readiness. The law cannot pause for grief, nor can it deny a child identity due to adult uncertainty. This perspective aligns with Celebrate Recovery Testimony's themes, where acceptance often follows truth, even when truth arrives painfully. When biological relatedness is confirmed, the courtroom experiences not triumph, but closure. Judge Lauren Lake frames the result as an ending to uncertainty rather than a victory. The child's identity is no longer questioned, and the grandmother gains clarity about her role. This moment reflects Adoption Story's full episodes discussions, where belonging is established through verification, not assumption. The court ensures that lineage is recognized in a manner that protects both legal rights and emotional boundaries. Across all cases, the court repeatedly demonstrates why DNA test cheating stories cannot be resolved privately once they escalate into legal disputes. Silence, avoidance, and denial only compound harm. The courtroom becomes a structured environment where truth is delivered without cruelty, but without compromise. Judge Lauren Lake's consistent approach shows how legal authority can coexist with empathy, provided boundaries are respected. The description further emphasizes that family court decisions are not isolated moments. Each ruling sets the foundation for future interactions, financial obligations, and emotional responsibilities. The court's role is not to guarantee reconciliation, but to remove uncertainty so informed decisions can be made. This principle mirrors insights often discussed in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where clarity is shown to be the most powerful legal outcome. Ultimately, the courtroom narrative reinforces that justice in family law is measured not by drama, but by resolution. The DNA test serves as the turning point, but the true weight of the decision lies in what follows. Parents leave knowing exactly where they stand, children gain confirmed identities, and families are forced to rebuild narratives based on fact rather than fear. Judge Lauren Lake closes each case with a reminder that truth is not punishment. It is a tool. How individuals use that tool determines whether families fracture further or begin the process of repair. The courtroom does not promise healing, but it does promise certainty. And in matters of identity, certainty is the first step toward responsibility, accountability, and long-term justice. This continuation deepens the understanding of how the court navigates complex human emotions while remaining anchored to legal standards. It shows how the evidence stage transforms personal chaos into legal clarity, reaffirming that in the pursuit of justice, truth must always come first. As the final outcomes settle, the courtroom narrative reaches its most important conclusion. Truth is not the end of the story, but the beginning of responsibility. Judge Lauren Lake makes it clear that every DNA test result carries weight beyond the paper it is printed on. Each ruling reshapes lives, restructures families, and permanently alters how individuals see themselves and one another. The court's role is not to soften the impact of truth, but to ensure it is delivered fairly, clearly, and without bias. Throughout these cases, the evidence stage functions as the backbone of justice. Personal history, emotional testimony, and family conflict are acknowledged, but they are never allowed to override verified facts. This approach reinforces the relationship between law and justice, demonstrating that justice cannot exist without consistency. Judge Lauren Lake repeatedly emphasizes that fairness requires discipline, especially in cases where emotions threaten to cloud judgment. One of the most striking aspects of these proceedings is how often doubt lingers long after relationships are formed. Marriages, partnerships, and family bonds are shown to survive for years under unanswered questions. The courtroom description highlights how such uncertainty quietly damages trust, creating emotional distance that grows over time. This is why people regret taking Truth Changes Everything podcast themes lightly. Once uncertainty is removed, there is no return to ambiguity. The truth demands action. In the first family's case, confirmation of biological paternity removes the legal dispute but exposes deeper issues. Judge Lauren Lake explains that while the DNA test resolves the question of fatherhood, it does not erase years of emotional harm. The court underscores that children absorb behavior, not explanations. Treating a child differently because of doubt creates consequences that must now be addressed deliberately. The law establishes parenthood, but healing requires accountability beyond the courtroom. This moment mirrors discussions often raised in the Divorce Course podcast, where unresolved mistrust becomes more destructive than separation itself. The courtroom description reinforces that clarity, even when painful, is preferable to prolonged suspicion. The legal system intervenes not to force reconciliation, but to remove the uncertainty that prevents honest decisions. In the second case, the court confronts denial directly. Judge Lauren Lake explains that once biological paternity is established, responsibility follows automatically. There is no legal space for emotional withdrawal or selective involvement. This reflects long-standing principles echoed in Supreme Court child support rulings, where the child's right to stability supersedes adult conflict. The courtroom becomes a place where excuses end and obligations begin. The involvement of extended family members further illustrates how DNA test cheating stories impact entire family structures. Grandparents, siblings, and partners are all affected by the outcome. Judge Lauren Lake clarifies that while emotional reactions are understandable, the law cannot be guided by favoritism or resentment. The concept of justice in jurisprudence requires neutrality, even when the truth is inconvenient. The third case brings the courtroom to its most reflective moment. With the alleged father deceased, the court must balance grief with legal necessity. Judge Lauren Lake carefully explains how surrogate DNA testing works, ensuring transparency in the process. This explanation reinforces public trust in the legal system, showing that even in complex circumstances, evidence-based methods remain reliable. The grandmother's hesitation reflects a deeply human fear, forming an emotional bond only to risk losing it. Judge Lauren Lake acknowledges this fear, but clarifies that legal recognition cannot be delayed due to emotional readiness. The law exists to protect identity and lineage, especially for children who cannot advocate for themselves. This moment aligns with themes often found in adoption stories' full episodes, where belonging is not defined by emotion alone, but by verified connection. When biological relatedness is confirmed, the courtroom does not erupt in celebration. Instead, there is a quiet sense of resolution. Judge Lauren Lake frames the outcome as closure, not victory. The ruling allows grief to coexist with truth, offering a foundation upon which new relationships can be built. This reflects Celebrate Recovery Testimony's themes, where acknowledgement becomes the first step toward acceptance. Across all cases, the court demonstrates why the DNA test remains one of the most powerful tools in modern family law. It eliminates speculation, prevents manipulation, and anchors decisions in fact. However, the courtroom description makes it clear that science alone does not repair damage. It merely provides the clarity required for meaningful change. Judge Lauren Lake consistently reinforces that the court does not assign moral judgment. The focus remains on outcomes that protect children and establish responsibility. This approach mirrors insights discussed in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where legal clarity is shown to be more transformative than emotional confrontation. The law's power lies not in punishment, but in certainty. The description also emphasizes how these rulings shape the future. Legal recognition affects inheritance rights, support obligations, and long-term family dynamics. The courtroom is not addressing a single moment, but an entire lifetime of consequences. This is why evidence must be handled with precision and care. A single ruling can alter the course of multiple lives. As the proceedings conclude, Judge Lauren Lake reminds all parties that truth is neutral. It does not take sides, assign blame, or favor emotion. It simply exists. How individuals respond to it determines whether families move toward stability or continued conflict. The courtroom offers resolution, but personal growth must occur outside its walls. These cases collectively reveal why family court remains one of the most challenging arenas of the legal system. It operates at the intersection of law, science, and human vulnerability. The evidence stage transforms personal chaos into legal clarity, ensuring that decisions are grounded in fact rather than fear. In the end, the courtroom description shows that justice is not about spectacle. It is about structure, accountability, and the protection of those who have the least power to defend themselves. Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom stands as a reminder that while truth may arrive late, it is never optional. The final lesson is clear. When questions of identity and responsibility arise, avoidance only deepens harm. The law provides a path forward, but only when individuals are willing to face the truth it reveals. In these cases, the DNA test does not destroy families. Uncertainty does. The court simply brings that uncertainty to an end. With clarity established, the courtroom closes not with celebration but with purpose. Parents leave knowing their obligations. Children leave with confirmed identities. Families leave with facts instead of doubts. And the justice system fulfills its role, not by deciding who is right or wrong, but by ensuring that truth is finally heard.